call to order the November 13th meeting of the Conestoga Valley Board of School Directors. I'd like to welcome all of those that are joining us online as well as those who are here in the boardroom. Will you please join me in pledging the flag? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Martin, may we have attendance?
All school directors are present tonight.
That's a pleasant change. I
Is
also
it worth an
know
emoji? Is it worth an emoji?
No, nothing is worth
No?
an emoji. Not since I was
Check it.
11 years old and put little hearts above my eyes.
I would ask.
That's going to be an issue, isn't it?
It is, it will be till, yes.
Yeah. I'd also note that the superintendent, Dr. Harton, and his administration cabinet are with us, and we do have a quorum. This is our first meeting of the month. It's one of two where we receive most of the informational presentations as well as discuss and deliberate future decisions. There may also be some action voting items required on timely issues or to meet time restraint guidelines. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any changes or additions before we vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed or abstaining say nay. Comments on board activities. There's a lot going on in the district right now. At this very moment, there's a lot going on in the district.
I was going to speak about the high school's production of Clue, which was this past weekend, which was amazing. Kids worked really hard. They did a great job. It's a very funny show. And I think it was very well received, judging by the audience laughter and enjoyment. So just kudos for the high school for putting that on and for Mr. Whitman and his team. They did a great job.
Anyone else been anywhere doing anything? Mike?
No.
Oh, you?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Superintendent's comments.
Okay. Good evening. No new staff or faculty to approve tonight. So in lieu of that, just a couple comments on some activities taking place around the district. I'll piggyback on what Mr. Gensel said. I had the opportunity to attend Clue yesterday. Didn't get to go all 3 days like you, Mark, but the kids did a great job. The student performers were excellent. It was funny. My children thoroughly enjoyed it. So good job to them. Also, it's a busy weekend in the district for Buckskin Activities Alliance. We had their two biggest fundraisers of the year both took place on the same weekend. They had the annual craft show on Saturday as well as Yeti Bingo on Sunday. So just kudos to the parents and community members that volunteered for that. They were both well attended. They were shorthanded on volunteers a little bit on Sunday, but still managed to run a concession stand and run the event and did a really nice job. And then finally to our last week we held school board building visits. We did have several of the board members were able to attend those. But kudos to our principals for being gracious hosts and good tour guides as we visited classrooms throughout the district, and hoping to do that again in the spring, and hopefully everybody can find some time to visit. So it's been an exciting week, a lot going on in the district right now as we gear up for Thanksgiving and the holiday season, but it's an exciting time. So that concludes my report,
And
my
right now
comments.
the middle school is filled with people walking around.
It is, yep, it's an active place at the middle school this evening.
Yeah, and I would do extra kudos to the tech department for what's set up over there. It's really well run.
Absolutely.
May I ask a question, Mr. Appleby? Will we be able to know how many people watched that online, the middle school?
Should be able to, yes.
Okay, thank you. This is a point in the agenda where if there's anyone in the audience who would like to address one of our agenda items, that would be now. Just want to speak up. If not, we'll move right on to item A, change orders. Mr. Peters.
Good evening. How you doing? So there's one change order tonight, GCO 9. There are 4 items on here, and I can just explain those briefly, and if anybody has any questions, let me know. The first one there, additional framing and plywood, some additional backing in some of the storage rooms for support that will help Ken and his team. Storage room 105 and 106. Change order request 24 there. There were 2 walls that were exposed that were pretty rough, old block walls that weren't tooled properly. In lieu of them going back and tooling all that, we elected to just put hat track and drywall over. One of them is the corridor between the gym and the new boardroom, and then there was another room that we had it as well. The third one there is there's a couple combination walls, meaning there's block on the bottom and about 10 foot up we have a drywall stud wall. Those are some of the fire rated walls that we have separating spaces. In this case, the block is 2-hour rated, but the drywall had only 1 layer on either side. We needed to add a second layer on either side to get that 2-hour rating per the code department. So those are around the music area. The walls are in those locations. Those are the rooms listed there. And then the last one was a request also by Ken and his team to have some additional marker board, tack boards, and some learning spaces to better utilize that room, specifically 117. Any questions on those?
If there's no questions, we'll put these change orders for approval next week.
Okay. And there was an allowance memo, I think that might have been in there, yeah. Some additional acoustic sound panels in the STEM lab. Right now, we put this against an allowance. It looks a little odd. We've put it against a site allowance. There are pots of money there. The site project, the site scope has gone very well. It's almost complete actually. So we didn't use the bulk rock. So there were some other pools of money. So instead of adding it to the project, we've used this allowance. So it looks a little bit odd, but there's some allowance money left in the site categories. So, and generally the project change order wise is running very well. We're at about a 1% change order at this point in time. So contractors have done pretty well.
Christopher, if you had to put a percentage on the site work completion, what percentage is it?
They're all but done. I mean, they had some minor grading and seeding.
You don't
Left.
anticipate any surprises?
No, I mean, the asphalt was done, paving
I'd say
is done.
Probably like 98%.
Yeah, I mean, they're real close. They were trying to push before it got cold.
They have some cleanup and like some final grading, seeding things to do, but like where they created a rut.
Yeah.
From of their own doing, so.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I think that's it.
Yeah.
It's nice to have a project going that's good.
Yes. The next one, the bids. Yeah.
Actually first.
We can go do the asbestos abatement, that's pretty simple. We actually had 6 bidders out of 7 that showed interest in the asbestos abatement portion of the project, and based off of the low bid, it would be awarded to Environmental Hazard Controls, EHC, which actually their office is right here on Horseshoe Road on the other side of the Goat Path underpass. So nice to have somebody local bid on our job and actually get it, so that's great. So yeah, no issues or concerns there, so.
Does that require us to go to that
20th, right?
next week?
Yes, yeah, this will go on consent agenda
Okay.
if no need for it to be
Yeah,
voted on this evening.
okay.
And the same with the Leola bids themselves, they can go to the consent agenda as well. Yeah, the one was a bid recommendation from our consultant, so it's just, again, reiterating what we just discussed.
Okay.
And our office will provide a similar letter for this documentation, so you have that as well. So these are the bids for Leola Elementary School that came in last week. They came in quite well. We rebid about 18 months after rebid the first time, and there was a normal amount of escalation this time, I would say, rather than some of the things we were seeing before. So These numbers were pretty good. What, again, just a reminder, what this did was there will not be students on site. And so there won't need to be phasing. We'll
No-
save money
no
on
modulars,
trailers. Good decision there. I think the project will be more streamlined doing it this way. The bids that we have up there, so general construction contract, the parent low bidder there is ECI Construction, 10 million. We have 3 alternates that we've included, and they're in the packet. And just to hit those briefly, EFIS repair was one of them. The second one was replacement of the auditorium operable partitions, and actually they came out to be 0. We had a base bid amount of repairing all the partitions, but it was quite difficult to do so. And parts weren't available, and it actually was basically a wash to replace them. So that's the highlighted in yellow, EFIS repair for $38,000. It was a wash to actually replace those operable partitions. And then the third one there, additional elevator equipment, just upgrades and improvements to the elevator. Same thing that we're doing in the Smoketown renovation at this point in time. So that's the general construction contract. If you can scroll back up to the summary sheet. Plumbing, SM Friday, 1.2 million. Mechanical construction contract, MICO, 2.4 million. Neither one of those had any alternates. And then the electrical contract, Mid-State Mechanical, a little over 5 million. Their one alternate there, that $1,500 is for the electrical for the new operable partitions, so that we had some additional electrical to put in there. And then the food service contract, lastly, 11,400, also a very nearby contractor, 383,000.
So currently, we have 4 of the 5 contractors on the Smoketown project. Mid-State Mechanical is a new player in the game, but if you look into who actually owns them, they're owned by the same gentleman that owns ECI Construction. So I have worked with Mid-State Mechanical. They've also done work here in the district in the past. So
We're going into this with the same confidence it will move as smoothly as Smoketown did.
I believe so.
Yeah.
And some of them are trying to work it out so it's the same project manager on that job as well. So they're kind of transition from, they might bounce off to something else on the interim, but it sounds like they're trying to set it up that the same guys come back to the Leola project. So.
Yeah, which would be great. And the other items there on the summary sheet, the district is going ahead with pre-purchasing of mechanical equipment, controls, generator. So those 3 items are listed there for a total of 22.6 million.
Which all 3 of those pre-purchase items are related to ESSER funds on this, so. This guarantees that we're getting that money spent in plenty of time. We get the product received before it's, that timeline ticks away, yep.
Questions?
Was there, I can't remember, was there any asbestos removal needed at the old
No.
school?
No,
Okay.
that was built in 95 timeframe,
So
so
is
that,
Leola the only building that would have any of that left? No,
The old Smoketown had a lot of it.
did they?
Fred's.
Under all the
And Fred still
linoleum,
has some
around
too?
all the pipes.
little bit across the street,
Okay,
very little, but we're monitoring it. We have an Element Environmental does our AHERA inspections and reports, and they update that every 6 months, so we keep an eye on everything. Majority of it is floor tile, like at Fritz or Smoketown. This, at Leola was an odd scenario. It was a ceiling above a ceiling, and it was the glue dots that were holding that ceiling on, so just, yeah.
In the school, if it's a smaller amount, are we still allowed to encase it, or does it have to be removed?
It's best to remove just for future generations. And in this case, we're taking down the one ceiling, so it's already gonna be exposed, so let's get it going
Get rid of it.
and get rid of it, yep, and in a safe and proper manner, so that way nobody else has a future surprise.
Any other questions?
Not necessarily a question, but I think it was a wise decision to rebid it. I mean, you can look at the bid tabs, for the most part, they're very competitive.
Yeah, unfortunately, we lost some GCs,
Right.
for whatever reason. They won some projects, they couldn't fit it into their schedule, or I think the one case, it was a little bit too large for their
Yeah.
bidding capacity, and little concerned about the one that was from out of state. You know, I had no knowledge of them, no history on them or what their, you know, what kind of projects they've done. So it's what's worse, the devil you know or the devil you don't, right? So,
We bid all three of these now so far, the middle school,
Mm-hmm.
Winnie Smith County, and Leoma.
yes,
And they'll still be able to do it when the kids are out of school.
yep, and that's the key element here.
Yeah,
And then we're not spending money on modulars, there's not the disruption of classes and the
Absolutely.
moving around and the leapfrogging of classes.
yeah,
So,
it's great. We earned a smooth program.
Yeah.
I'll take it, I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Dr. Kozer. And is Mrs. Weimer with you?
Hello, hello.
Hello?
I'd like to introduce Karen Weimer to you all. She's our Brownstown Library Media Specialist. Some of you know Karen from having students at Brownstown. So we are here this evening just to share with you an opportunity for our students. This is our first on-site author visit that we're proposing post-COVID, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And so we're doing things a little differently this time around. In the past, the author visits were funded through some district funds, some PTO funds. But what we found was not all of the schools have equal PTO bank accounts, right? And so we didn't want one of our schools to miss out on an opportunity that the other schools would get to have. And so we're using our ESSER opportunity for enrichment literacy experiences to fund this particular author visit. Our elementary librarian team started this process back in March and April, starting to vet and look for different authors to come and visit each of our schools. And so we landed on Jacqueline Davis, an oldie but a goodie, 2007, The Lemonade War. It is a very popular children's book about two siblings who are 14 months apart in age, and they have this whole sibling rivalry thing going on. They start a lemonade. They each start their own lemonade stands and end up learning all of these business principles and principles about how to get along as siblings and a lot of other great life lessons. And so the proposal you have before you, this will be coming from ESSER funds. Each building would have a whole day with the author. The librarians have put together just a really good schedule for everybody to come out and be a part of this enrichment event at the schools. So we wanted to share the contract with you tonight. This would go on consent agenda for next Monday night for approval.
Questions?
So, go ahead.
I do, the fifth grade, they have 10 minutes with the author, is that?
That schedule is draft for right now, so yeah.
Because there was lunch in there.
Lunch, you got it, yeah. We wanted to put together at least, can we get some of the pieces to fit, but then each librarian is gonna work with their building principal to schedule the exact day.
So what is that time that each grade or double grades spend with her? Like what does that look like?
It'll be about 50-minute presentation. I think kindergarten's gonna be about 5 minutes less. So it'll be kindergarten, we'll have their time with her, and then first and second will be together, and third and fourth, and then fifth
Gotcha.
will each. So they'll each have a good chunk of time with the author.
And will she be like reading a book to them or?
She'll be doing a presentation based on the Lemonade Wars for the older kids, and then another book that she's also written that is part of the Pennsylvania Young Readers' Choice Award books this year. She'll be talking about that with the younger kids. And then they'll have an opportunity to buy the books ahead of time and have her autograph it for them too, so.
Question and answer. We'll have activities leading up to it. We'll have activities after. Just getting to experience and meet with face-to-face a real live author is a pretty big deal for elementary students.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had it.
It has been. What, do you know when the last one was?
Oh.
It was before I came, was it?
Yeah, cause my daughter was gonna go see him and all that, and then COVID shut down, it was
It was
probably like
2020, we were supposed to
day,
have.
like a day
We
or
were
two after.
supposed to have someone
Yeah.
on site
Yeah.
in 2020, wow.
And usually that came through our PTOs, but I like the idea that everybody's going to have an equal chance at this.
That was really important to the team.
We'll have to figure out how to finance it going forward with that ESSER.
Mhm.
Thank you. Is that it?
Good.
Okay, we'll put this
Okay.
on the consent
Thank you,
agenda.
thanks for coming tonight.
Dr. Mann, you gonna join us now for the assessment review?
Yes, I am.
It's your favorite presentation of the year, school board. Yes. All right, so every year, Dr. Mann and I share with you some of the themes from our district level data. And then we pair that up with the items that we're starting to look at as far as curriculum, instruction, assessment, and environment for next year's budget. So part of this is a year at a glance. How did we do last year? Where are we at with our achievement and our growth data? And then the other part is how does that drive what we're putting in our budgets right now for the 24-25 school year? So just to get started this evening, we always start with our demographics slide because once again, I think it is noteworthy to see each of our subgroups and our student groups increasing in diversity every single year, right? So this year, our biggest jump was in the percentage of economically disadvantaged student groups and the students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. You can see that on our latest demographics, we're at almost 50% of our students qualifying for that assistance. And so certainly that's a subgroup we want to look at. That's a subgroup that we want to kind of check on the health, right? Do a temperature check as to how our students are performing in that subgroup. Our English language learners subgroup also bumped up by just a little bit again this year. We keep seeing that slow and steady influx of L's from, what did we share before? Almost over 40 different languages, countries of origin in the district. But you can see from our demographics, again, just how broad our diversity here is in the district. And that's really important as we look at the subgroups and as we look at the achievement and the growth data throughout the rest of the presentation.
When you look at our achievement data, it's consistent with what we looked at before. And so nothing of great surprise. The work that we started with the curriculum writing and so forth, obviously we're seeing the need for that and to continue with that. Now, just a couple quick comments is, you're looking at this from a high view. So we have ways of breaking this down and having the data at grade level, and even breaking it down even more into looking at very specifics. But this is a high view, looking at the data. So you have and this is K-8. So you're looking at K-8 kind of together. But it speaks to the need of what we've been working on, the K-8 work. And same thing with ELA, and you can see for elementary, the downward trend, and then the middle school, same thing. Again, the need for the K-8 work to address the needs that we have in our programming. Science, similar type of thing, a little more consistent at the middle level. But again, the other interesting thing with science is we have new steel standards coming online throughout the Commonwealth, and so there's going to be a lot of work that we're going to be taking on beginning this summer over the next couple of years and addressing and updating our curriculum around the new steel standards. Keystones, fairly consistent. Obviously the concern that we had before and we still have is with high school algebra. You can see that there. But again, speaking to the work that we're doing with the curriculum work that needs to happen. Talk about K-8 for the PSSA, but then also you have to look at the Keystone component of it, which is a middle school, 8th grade through high school. The other thing, just as a slight comment to keep in mind, when you think about the Keystone exams, you're looking at data when the students first take the test. The Keystone is different than the PSSA in that students can retake the test, and we have things in place to help them along along the way to do that, because it is a graduation requirement, and there are different pathways that the students will take and follow to achieve that. One is obviously passing the test, but I just wanted to mention that when you think about this data, this is that first blush, students taking it for the first time, data. So some takeaways, the key students remains consistent. We've seen a 5% growth in elementary math. We're looking at the climb in the proficiency in the ELA. We've seen that before. I mentioned about the next generation science standards, the STEEL standards coming online, and that high school algebra continues to be a concern that we need to be looking into.
So we always share the achievement data, which is what you just saw. That's our number of students who are reaching the grade level proficiency. They're hitting proficient or advanced, right? Our growth data, the value added assessment system, PVAS, takes any student wherever they are and says, did they make 1 year's worth of academic growth? So both measures are really important. It's great to have growth, but at some point, we got to get you to grade level proficiency, right? And vice versa. So what we see in our growth data compared to our PSSA data is we are all over the map. There is very little correlation between very few places where the achievement data mirrors the growth data. So for example, in the elementary math, where we saw a 5% increase in the number of students proficient, when we get to the PVAS math, we're below the growth standard. So our data in CV this year is really an enigma and is going to require a lot more deeper analysis, as Dr. Mann said. We spent some time with our principals doing a deeper dive into grade levels, into subgroups, trying to look for some of these patterns. So overall, Dr. Hartman, if you want to pop back to ELA, when you look at our growth for ELA, across the grades, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, we're in that well below, but again, when you look at 4th and 5th grade, we're up in the well above that 1 year. And so yeah, go ahead, Phil.
When I look at that, I'm like, I won't say it, but it's very concerning to see that 6, 7, and 8, all 3 middle school grades aren't even at the grade. I guess that's average, I guess. So what is happening between 5th grade and 6th grade? What is causing that decline?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not just 6th grade, it's not just 8, it's all 3 grades.
Right.
So
right. If you go back to a year ago, if you pull up last year's presentation, it's a very similar presentation. And a year ago, this launched our Modern Learning Curriculum Project, because one of the things that we saw was we don't have a clear and consistent curriculum framework in ELA from kindergarten to 10th grade English, which is usually its keystone, so that's kind of where you gauge, right, K to 10. This data is only reinforcing that the work that we started on this summer with our teachers of putting together a K to 10 scope and sequence aligned to grade level standards with rigorous prompts for student discussion, right? More writing opportunities, more text-dependent analysis opportunities. This data only reinforces the need for that. So at least at 4th and 5th grade, there was some structure. It was from 2009 Reading Street, but there was something, right? Where 6, 7, and 8, it was really teacher-created materials that we hadn't looked at it K to 8 before, and looked at where we were overlapping, duplicating, or missing maybe some of those core standards.
So from a year ago to now, those averages for 6th, 7th, and 8th, from this time now to last year, have they stayed status quo? Have they gone up? Has it gotten worse?
It's very similar. So when we pulled up last year's presentation and we looked at the key takeaway slides, they're almost identical key takeaway slides. Again, we didn't start the curriculum project until July. So if next year at this time, we're sitting here with 2024 data, and we at least want to see consistency, right? At least get in the same range. What we're seeing is just total opposite ends of that growth continuum, which speaks to the lack of consistency in your overall. The first thing you look at when you're doing a health check on your system, when you have data that concerns you, is you look at your curriculum and your assessment. That's the first place you go to. And so we couldn't check that off as consistent, standards-based, being implemented across classrooms in every grade level. And that's what drove us to really start at that very first piece in creating that standards-based curriculum.
Okay, while you're creating the curriculum, what are you doing to help these kids catch up? Because I mean, that's 3 classes right there that are behind for more than 2 years. So.
We've started implementing the new units of study, so we're not waiting another year. And that, we could have done that, we could have sat and said, hey, let's wait, let's make everything look really pretty. We're in it right now, we're going live as we're writing it, having the conversations, looking at those different prompts and the learning that's happening in the classroom. So we are in the work right now.
In addition to that, and working with MTSS and identifying the kids and supporting them that have needs that beyond the tier 1 support that's necessary. So identifying those kids and then getting them the support that they need to.
So that's our interventions, our tier 2 and our tier 3 interventions.
Is there a way to do like a mid-year evaluation of all these kids to test, see if they're progressing?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because
And
CDC
some of-
can't get
right,
any worse.
Right.
Correct.
And to speak to some of the inconsistencies, we started doing the CDTs last year at the middle school. So a couple things just to take in with that, we do that, we're doing them online. And so there's that whole new online experience of the testing itself, which, again, maybe impacts it a little bit. I would suggest it's not that much, but the CDTs in and of themselves was the first time we did that last year. So that is a new tool for us as far as to unpack and make sure that we are progressing along and making the needs, or addressing those needs as we go along. So that's a new tool we're using, and we're using that against IXL data as well. And then using
3
IXL.
times a year we do
Right,
benchmark
benchmarking.
assessments.
And then we use the IXL also as part of that benchmarking, then also identifying the skills that are needed, where the deficiencies are. And it takes time to pull all that together and making sure that your standards are aligned, because the state puts out your standards, and you have that. Then you have like IXL, for example, and then CDT, which is out of the state as well, it identifies those standards. And then you have to take a look at timing-wise, pacing-wise, and so forth, where are we hitting these standards and when are we hitting these standards?
Are we hitting them enough times
Correct.
for the importance
Correct.
and the weight of that standard?
Some of the things that we've identified through this process of writing the curriculum is that when you look at, for example, say 7th grade standards, right? They're the 7th grade standards. There's been where we've identified where there's like 6th grade standards that have moved up a little bit, just kind of creeped up a little bit. So the idea that we just got to make sure that we have, as Dr. Kozer said, a viable, reliable curriculum that's consistent. And it's challenging. The work that we've been doing this year is identifying those and then helping identify the why it needs to change, as well as then looking at, well, how does it need to change? So that we are addressing those needs, and those needs are, when you're coming out of COVID needs, you have the inconsistency of the curriculum needs, so it's compiled.
A couple of specific strategies to your point. I don't know, did Rachel make it back down from the? Yes, there she is. One of the things they did at the middle school, which was really cool, is so using those CDTs as our in-between assessments, because we don't want to wait till April to do something. Rachel led the whole middle school in individual goal setting around the CDTs. So every student, when you go to conferences, your student will be talking about the goals that they're setting, how they want to grow in their proficiency in those different areas. And so it's things like that that start to help students be aware of their individual performance levels and where they need to strengthen and do some more work. It's a critical strategy, a research-based strategy that we're excited to see at the middle school. At the elementary school, one of the things that we've done is we started implementing what's called a tier 1.5 intervention. So we use our data, those in between 3 times a year, and we look at the classroom level and we say, wow, odd and even numbers. Like 2nd grade in my class is just like not making it with odd and even numbers. We'll do a 6-week, 5 minutes a day on odd and even numbers with quick progress checks along the way. We saw a lot of success with that strategy last year in the spring when we started really looking at that. So targeting class-wide interventions that we can just quick hit, standing in line to go to recess, odd and even, pull up those flashcards. Things like that that are just kind of living, breathing strategies that are happening in the schools based on the in-between data points that we want to see impact the larger growth of students.
So if I'm understanding correctly, there are 3 checkpoints throughout this year
Yes,
to make sure we're making progress.
yes.
I would suggest it would be good to have a report to the board at each one of those
That's
checkpoints
great.
to make sure that we are making progress, so that we don't have those same results
Yes.
next year.
Absolutely. One of the things, I'm super excited, our Leola math specialist, Jill Schneider, did a great job. If I can just brag on Jill for a second. Not just because she has a great name, but she put together her data analysis of where students, second graders left in May. And then we came back, we put that class-wide intervention in. So the second grade teachers wrote down for the third graders, you should start the school year focusing on, let's stay with odd and even numbers, right? Focus on this. And they spent the first 4 to 5 weeks on odd and even numbers. She put an analysis together of the Leola data. Almost every single grade level showed no loss from that summer learning span based on those 4 weeks of come back and hit where they left off and start right there and keep them moving, right? We were so excited, we were like high-fiving that Leola data because even if there was some summer slide, they came back really, really quickly. And it was some of the highest fall data that we had seen at Leola. So that's all part of that MTSS framework. That's part of the work we've been doing with the IU, with the MTSS consultant, helping us use our data to make really good decisions about what we're doing at the classroom level to see immediate growth in our students. So we would be happy to share some of that data and report on that to the board.
That's always been part of the argument, hasn't it, against people that complain about summer slide, that we find out although there is a slide, they come back very quickly.
Very quickly with targeted instruction.
Yeah.
If it's just random, who knows?
Well,
Mm,
right.
But with really targeted, focused instruction, boom, we go right back.
Two things. One of the things the board has focused on a number of times is concern about what's happening to K-12. You know, that continuum. And Mrs. Strasburg was here. She really laid that out carefully for us for the English language.
Mm-hmm.
My concern right now is even if you do try group assessments 3 times a year, from when you do your assessment to when you have the data, you're well into the next third. Am I right? Or
No,
is this happening
so
faster
with
than I
CDTs,
imagined?
it's immediate. The student finishes the test, data's there. IXL, it's immediate.
Okay.
Acadience math, we've moved, most assessments have shifted to online administration so that it's immediate data. It's
And it
just
can be
putting it together in a
compiled into,
format to look at.
A grade-wide. I'm just thinking that this is November, and I'm assuming this is last year, finishing last year.
This data takes longer, correct? PVAS just came in 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. The
Oh,
growth
okay.
data just came 2 weeks ago. We've had
Well,
PSSA since
sometimes it's
June.
not us. I know if we do state testing, we have to wait for them to tell us how it's going. By that
Right.
time, we're into the next school year.
Yes,
And
yes.
we don't know if we put the right things in place to start the school year. That certainly
Yes.
doesn't help us very much.
That's why we have the 3 local assessments in
Okay.
the interim. And this is, they call this like autopsy data. This is
Yes.
after the fact. This is you dissect it and see what's going on after things have happened. The benchmarking data that happens 3 times a year, that's our live, in the moment, immediate that we want to apply to those class-wide interventions.
When the year's over and you get that last local assessment, it's usually aligned pretty well with what the state sends you back later.
Did we look at our IXL up against PSSA this year?
Not this past year, but we have. And
Because
again,
I often
inconsistent.
wonder about the value and the quality of the
Mhm.
comparison of local
Mhm.
assessment to state.
Well, and that's part of the challenge is to make sure that you're using assessments that are going to
But
give you
same
accurate
standards.
data. And so when you look at multiple assessments, whether it's the CDT, IXL at the secondary level, and then looking at the elementary level, you have Dibbles, Acadian's Math, IXL as well, and, lining those things up. So we work on putting together reports that bring those data points together, so you can line up those assessments right beside each other. So, you can see if there's any variance or differentiation, or not differentiation, but any difference between them. And then they ask the question, well, why? I mean, what's going on there that you would see something like that happen? So you need to look at a variety of data points, and see how that lines up to what you're doing, and then make those decisions.
So can I make a request? So this is all like macro level, and it doesn't doesn't have a very good like measure of change, so to speak. So maybe in the future, pick out some of those like micro variables that are of importance to report upon underneath of this, to have a better sense of, okay, what are those variables that you guys are seeing in the data that are important, that would show that smaller variable of change.
Using the benchmark assessments.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
And other assessments. Because I think that would help answer a lot of the questions that were just asked.
Right, and again, this is super high level.
Yeah.
We go way more in depth. Each school schedules a PVAS consultation. We break it down by every group. I have one where we are just breaking down ESL growth. In a month, I'll be able to tell you every single thing about every English learner in what we present to the board is usually we call it the dipstick, right? Put it in, check the oil level. Are we good? Okay. But when we see something like that, that's when we say, hey, there's an issue here. We need to really start looking at across the board 6, 7, 8. What's going on?
Getting down to individual learners. In any group, you'll have a certain variety. What do we use to identify those within the group that are at the bottom?
So what I love about PVAS is they actually will break it out by quintiles. That's one of my favorite reports in PVAS that we look at with principals. So you look at your ones are your typically lowest performing students. And so they'll look at, you might be getting dark blues with your highest performing students, good for you. But the real measure of the health of a district is that your students who are performing the lowest on PSSA are well exceeding a year's worth of growth. Because they're never, if you're a 5th grader reading on a 2nd grade level, you're not gonna catch up to 5th grade on just a year. You need more than a year for multiple years. And so that's a piece that we look at with each building principal as we look at the quintile report. We look at how's your school doing with our most vulnerable learners? That's the measure. That's like, you hit it. That's the report that if we're firing on all cylinders, that quintile 1 is moving.
To be able to continue that program. We lose so many kids because they move around. That we can't control.
Right. Oh, now I got, let's see, we could just do the whole evening on PVAS.
Yeah.
Yes. It is
So,
actually a great system.
As a board, okay, we're hearing the constant themes of people not being on the same page, of teacher, as these programs evolve, teachers put a little twist on it here, a little twist on it there, and it migrates, etc. But we as a board have some responsibility of this too, because in all fairness, the administration has come with programs to get us all on the same page, and we've said no. Go back and try again. That takes time. Okay, this is not a 1-year fix. This is not a 1-month fix. This is a multi-year fix, etc. So we just need to be cognizant that when we make a decision to say no, this is the output.
Yeah, I can see some of that. I think some of the trends, though, to me speak almost more to the last several years, particularly with, I'm not surprised that the economically disadvantaged has risen. I think that's affected the last 3 years. And I remember the last report, and it was very consistent with this, and the fact that it's really hitting hardest in those 3 grades, 6th, 7th, and 8th. I think more speaks to just the general problems at large, and some of that, especially because we have approved new math programs and stuff like that too. And we still see these numbers in middle school, but they hit after that program. They weren't a part of the stepping stones and some of the one which works on the mastering and the proficiency. The only other question I would have was, if I'm thinking the years of this data are correct, then we have 9th and 10th graders now that were part of the low growth 7th and 8th grade from the last 2 years. And I know algebra remains a concern.
2021 data was great PVAS. Remember that great
Yeah.
PVAS because we were the only in-person district. Remember, this is also comparing us to all the kids in the state.
Right,
So some of the sixth grader is how did CV's sixth graders line up
right.
progress and growth wise compared to how much
So then
all
when
the
you
sixth
look at
graders
9th and
moved.
10th, how does that data compare? Because those kids would have been part of, the students that we have now that were 9th and 10th would have been part of the well below.
So we have a cohort report for that in PVAS, which we
Okay.
can definitely run for people who are interested. It will actually show, right, because that Keystone Literature Group, we'd have to go back and look a couple years back to see where they're at. But there is an actual PVAS report that we can look at one cohort of kids from 4th grade all the way through
Because that's the
and
one
see where they're
advantage, like
at.
when you have 4 elementary schools feeding into 1 middle school.
Mhm.
So the data of whether or not an individual school class is proficient that's a huge variable.
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of uncontrolled variables there, it's pouring into one funnel. Now we have one funnel moving to another funnel. So it would seem to me that the way the trend correlates from 7th and 8th directly into 9th and 10th for this last 2 years that we're talking about would show, if there's now showing growth all of a sudden for 9th and 10th, okay, well then is it, like, it just seems to me that would be another interesting kind of
It
point
is.
of data.
Keep in mind what Don said though about the Keystone is your best try. So you get 3 tries at that Keystone and your best one is factored in here. So at PSA, or at the like 3rd graders, they don't take the PSSA 3 times.
Right.
Thank goodness. Do you know what I mean? And there's a lot of work and intervention that districts do from the first Keystone to the second to the 3rd. And so that's the only thing maybe that may have some impact on that high school proficiency in PBES. And honestly, the Keystone is a less difficult test than the PSSAs. Like when you put an 8th grader who's taking Algebra 1 and give them the Algebra 1 Keystone and give them the 8th grade PSSA, I can guarantee you they score higher on the Algebra 1 Keystone almost every time. Because it requires a much higher depth of knowledge level on the PSSA. Our Keystones have not been leveled up to that.
Very specific.
I think what Mark and Mike both say work together, because when we have to approve or decide to change a program, it's gonna take a couple years to see the difference.
You will.
And we're dealing with a moving target.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the kids that are in 3rd grade or 4th grade or 5th grade this year aren't the kids that were there last year. They may not have had the program that the ones coming in had. And you always have to remember that for our parents, there's only one kid they're concerned about.
That's right. That's right.
That's theirs.
That's right.
And theirs is on that conveyor belt.
Sure.
So we have to keep up with that, and what we need to do is be careful to put in the best program we can so that it has some longevity, there's a chance to do its job. And meanwhile, pay attention to those that didn't have that advantage the year before and catch them up. I know you said growth isn't everything, but without it, you have nothing. That's why I think the PVAS is so much more important.
It is.
I'd rather have
The
all
two
my
together are
students
super important.
having significant growth than a few mastering it and the others are lagging behind. Much better. Okay, back to you.
Yes, okay, so then if we move to math, and Mark, just to your point earlier, again, just this inconsistency, the discrepancy that we need to be doing a deeper, what we call root cause analysis is, we saw the 5% bump in the math scores. We'd love to be able to attribute that to stepping stones right out of the gate, right? I don't know, I gotta see a couple more years of that data before we can say that's it. But then here we are, 4th and 5th grade growth, and you're in the below and we just met a year. And so again, it's just, we have inconsistencies and anomalies in this data that is causing us to go much deeper at each school level and elementary wise and start saying, okay, let's look at each individual building, what's happening by grade level, by classroom, where are we at? Where are these discrepancies coming from? So we saw more kids hit the grade level standard, but not as many hit their 1 year of growth target. So again, this is the temperature check. That signals to us, hey, we need to look at this more closely. We need to do a deeper dive.
You look at the Algebra 1, I mean, we said that was an area of concern, and it is. But yeah,
Efficiency wise, right.
growth wise, it's almost off the chart. You think, all right, what's going on here? We gotta.
You have kids just the opposite. That had large growth but still can't get to the standards.
That's it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Right. So
And
each
to
of
me,
it
as long
comes,
as they're moving forward in the right direction.
it's important. But we also want proficient readers and mathematicians, yes. So then science, the science one is, it's just tough this year because as Dr. Mann said, this is our last year with the current science standards that have been in place since the early 2000s. Next year, this will look most likely completely different because we're moving to a huge shift in not only the content of what's being taught in the Pennsylvania STEELS standards, but also, again, the rigor, the type of instruction that's required, the inquiry-based learning. I mean, it is a system shift that we're gonna be hitting over the next 3 to 5 years in science. So that is gonna be, it's kind of like the last hurrah with this data. I don't even know how they will do PVAS data next
Right.
year because the PSSA will look so completely different. It's apples and oranges. So then, as we said earlier, one of the important pieces, especially with growth, is that we take the time to look at some of our subgroups of students. Again, we're looking for those disproportionalities. We're looking for specific areas where our subgroups may be underperforming or outperforming the all groups. So take a look at how did all of our students do, and then how did specific subgroups of students do. So when you look at our economically disadvantaged, what I did was I kind of lined it up to the all group as a whole. And in ELA with our economically disadvantaged, this subgroup was either the same as the all group or actually had a larger growth measure than the all group in 3 out of the 7 different grade levels indicated here. There's one of those alert signals. So here's a group that compared to the all was only in line with the all group 3 out of the 7 different grade levels. So that's a piece I want to look at. Something's going on there. There's a gap in ELA for our students who are considered economically disadvantaged. In math, they were 6 out of the 7 grade levels. They were at or above the all group. Okay, that's good. That's what we want to see, right? Are they tracking with the same as the majority of students in the district? So that ELA is a critical piece there. For our English language learners then, ELA, they were at the same as the all or above in 4 out of 7 of the different grade levels and tests. Again, not quite as big of a gap, but still a little gap there with ELA. And then in math, they were at 6 out of the 7 targets. So feeling good about math. Our L's are tracking with the all. No disproportionate areas, right? We're doing okay in there. Again, this is just the first, see how we kind of use this as the temperature check, right? Where are the big glaring areas that we need to do more research into? And then the last piece, the students with IEPs. For ELA, they were on 3 out of 7 targets, and then math was 4 out of 7. And so again, that's an area that we want to dive more deeply in with our principals. We want to work with the statewide PVAS team to do a little bit more disaggregation because there is a gap there, right, for our students with IEPs versus our all students. So those are some critical pieces. When you put those together, we have that key takeaway slide that this is, the data dropped 2 weeks ago. Here's where we are. Here's what we're starting to work on. Our positives being the keystone for literature and algebra 1 growth. We only had those couple of areas of disproportionality for our subgroups that we want to look at overall. our major subgroups are doing okay, tracking with all. And then really good to see the L's overall meeting that growth standard. That can be a difficult group to show that 1 year of growth because there's so much language learning that's going on in addition to mastering a state test. Our areas that we want to dig into more and do some more root cause analysis is that inconsistency again. What we saw in proficiency, not the same in the growth, our 6th and 7th grade growth, and then those two subgroups in ELA, economically disadvantaged, and our students with IEPs. So again, this first glance gives us kind of our marching orders for our next consultations. Who are we meeting with? What are we talking to the principals about? What are we looking at in our next set of benchmark data that starts coming out? We'll start running that second assessment in January when we come back after the break.
Now, to shift gears a little bit, looking at those bigger projects, things that we're moving on and looking at how what those recommendations will be going forward. So as Jill mentioned earlier, we look at curriculum, instruction, assessment, and environment, and how those 4 things tie together. And the things that keep in mind is we have the profile of CV learner that we start working on. We have the instructional model that Jill's going to talk about. That also help guide a lot of the decision-making and putting us in the direction that we are now headed.
And so when we look at the areas of the instructional model, these slides did not change from last year because we saw in the data, right? And so last year was our planning year. Last year was the year we got the information together for our positive school climate to launch PBIS. We launched that in August in all of our schools. The next piece of the model, the relevant and rigorous learning experiences. We were really focused in last year on developing the process for a standards-based curriculum K-12, focusing in on the rigor of our assessments, and our assessments actually align to those grade level standards, and how are we looking at those from classroom to classroom. And then personalizing learning, there's our differentiation, there's our supports for students who need that. Again, nothing changed since last fall. We didn't fix those growth issues in a year, right? We put the plans in place to launch each of these things at the start of this school year. And then that last part of the instructional model, the flexible learning environments, as you know, we've been really focusing on that purposeful and strategic technology integration. I think we talked a couple months ago, we have Apple Learning coming in to do some really specific coaching for teachers who are interested in making that a focus of their educator effectiveness plans and just continuing to provide those supports for our classroom teachers on how we can use technology to enhance our instruction.
And all this builds on our comprehensive plan.
All of it builds on the comprehensive plan.
Here's my concern. I understand why they changed that from 5 years to 3, because they felt in so many districts 5 years got stale. We've been an exception to that, especially this year. But now we're looking at, we've used this, we supposedly have our confidence in this. This is where we've invested our focus, and we're about to write another comprehensive plan. We're not gonna lose this, are we?
No way. No.
That's my concern.
No.
Isn't it every 3 years we have to reinvent the whole process?
I think we would have a mass exodus. CDA, is Tom here tonight? I think we would have a mass exodus if we said, hey, scrap everything we just told you and we're gonna go in another direction.
Major changes is dangerous.
Yeah, what we keep talking about is.
Are we gonna have a problem? I don't know who you use it. I don't know if the state pays any attention or just makes us do this. But if we don't make many changes, except maybe extend it for more years, come up with maybe some new strategies, but basically keep the same framework.
That's right. Yeah, our targets will change. The data, like what we're saying at the end of year 3 will change because it goes from that initial stages to by the end of 2027, we want to be at full implementation rather than we want to be developing.
But the method and the programs together is there.
The strategies that are in there, yes. Absolutely. That's why Dr. Hartman and I met today to talk about the comprehensive plan.
I know how much work went into this.
Right.
Dr. Mann really knows how much work went into this. And it just seems to me that we can't take the chance on saying, well, now we need to look at it fresh.
No, we actually set up the review, the way we're doing it with the stakeholder group as simply, look at what's currently in there. What did we hit that we wanna ramp up? What did we not hit that we can let go of actually for the next plan? There's nothing about a new, we're really building on the last plan to revise and update the new plan.
Good.
We
It's gonna
talked
look
about that
very much the
before.
same.
Mhm.
You know,
Stay the
that,
course.
we talked about that, the PSSAs are not the final output of success, it's a guide, it's a gauge, because it changes a lot too. The exam changes, so it's really hard
Yeah.
to gauge success year over year if your benchmark is changing year over year, your baseline's changing year over
Well,
year.
there's not much to be gained by comparing this year's fifth graders with last year's fifth graders.
Right.
Yeah,
We want to
So-
know
Want
this
the
year's
trend
fifth
for the
graders, how do
cohort.
they do once they get to sixth grade? Because sometimes, just by the nature of randomness, you can get one class coming through that's really sharp.
Mhm.
For whatever reason, you're gonna get all,
and you know, we got the pre-K program, so it's gonna help feed that long-term
yeah.
piece of that.
But the state tends to just compare third grade, this
They're just an
year,
output,
third grade.
they just wanna look at the output and that's it.
They don't know what to do.
Because they're not gonna fund anything for you
Yeah,
to fix it.
okay.
I heard Idette got wonderful hugs from the pre-K children at Smoketown
I
Elementary.
had a
last
sweater that had,
Emojis.
There was a hug one, you know.
embroideries on it, and one of the things was this pine tree that was old. Every class I walked into, somebody, girl over had to come up and play with that tree.
It's a little tactile sensory thing.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, they
Yeah.
were just, they made my day.
Right?
They made my day. Took 20 years off my life.
It's exactly, you can't walk in a pre-K room and not leave happy and smiling. It is
I mean,
impossible.
you walk in, it looks like they're all just fooling around.
Right?
Until you stop and watch it, really, this one's lying on the carpet here, the other one's, until you stop and watch them for a while and realize the developmental activity they're really involved in. They're just adorable. Take them all home.
And that will have benefits later on.
Oh,
Absolutely, 100%.
Absolutely.
no doubt at all. That's been proven so many times. This is gonna pay off. I wish we could offer it to every kid in the district.
Mhm. Mhm. I hear you. The fact that we have 100 slots filled
And a waiting list.
and a waiting list.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
amazing.
And if we wanted to, we could expand that on our own.
Yep, if we're willing to invest in it, we could.
And I'm
We
willing to
talked
invest.
about this
We have.
years ago, about establishing a pre-K
We have.
building.
We have.
We're gonna have a whole nother conversation here.
Yeah, right.
This is a strategy piece of,
I
based
know.
upon
Well, there
the-
are some states that fund pre-K.
Oh, absolutely.
It's gonna be universal soon enough, I think.
Mhm.
They also all pay a larger percentage of their school expenses from the state. We can't ask our population to support even, that would be a Class A program.
Sure.
But the price tag is gonna be difficult if we have to pay for it all ourselves.
Oh,
But does it pay dividends down the long run?
That's what we play with here,
I
balancing our resources with our goals.
understand. I'm willing to adjust the resources if we want to expand
I mean, I'm happy to put several models
Yeah,
and
well,
proposals
they
to
say,
the board to
You put your
consider.
money where your heart is, so, but
Well,
we're
we
putting
do-
other people's money
well-
there, not just our own.
Well, but you're investing in humanity, you're investing in society, you're investing in,
You're talking to the choir here.
I understand, but somebody has to step up and say, this is what we're gonna do.
I
And
think-
I've never had a taxpayer or parent say, I don't want to invest in pre-K.
I agree.
Do you would like Dr. Kozer to go back and draft some thoughts?
I think we need to let everyone be involved in that. Dr. Kozer,
Well, I don't want it just to
Mrs.
say that
Hunsinger.
nothing.
We do have to balance our resources
We
with
do.
it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean there isn't room. but there's only so much room, and that's a
Significant
value
amount of
judgment.
strategy that needs, it's not just oh, let's do this.
Yeah.
No, but it opens up the doors.
Well,
Yes,
mhm,
well, I
yes.
think we've taken a great step with,
Yeah.
well, I had that backward, first 10.
All right,
That was step one.
so do we know what we're gonna do?
We're gonna keep focusing on it.
I think
We're gonna
they're
keep
going to
focusing
tell
on I would be interested in some models on expanding the pre-K program. Dr. Hartman?
I have some thoughts, Mr. Talley.
I know. Why don't we add it to the next, maybe to the next,
Adele's over there turning
Quarterly
pale.
review. What's that?
Adele's behind you turning pale.
No, she's good. We'll fund it. Always find a way.
I think one thing to kind of, mention just from my perspective, sitting in on this though, and to your point, Mr. Talley, is that I think there's some basic fundamental best practices, good practice around school improvement that's out there, right? One of it, probably first and foremost, is having just as simple as the guaranteed and viable curriculum, which I think from my initial assessment may have been lacking here. And I think that's what this team has done an excellent job probably over the last 3 years, 4 years is probably trying to put in place. But like to your point earlier, it takes time for that,
It does.
Everybody would love to, we could throw a bunch of stuff against the wall and see what sticks, but I think sticking to what we know can work. And I think first and foremost, you talk about curriculum, instruction, assessment practices is another area to look at, and then the educational environment. I think this team is hit the nail on the head of where we need to focus that. It just takes time. It's when you're in your first year of and kind of still in the process of building and implementing at the same time, all the work being done with Thai Associates. I think from my experience, that's where you'll see the biggest bang for your buck. And then you have the extra things we're doing to eliminate those barriers like pre-K, like all the intervention we're doing. That's just gonna come, exponentially make those increases. So, I think everything, and that the data's not dissimilar to what you're seeing in other places, in other districts. It's, we can blame COVID, we can blame whatever, but I think the key is, do you have that plan? And I agree with Idet. I think, looking at comprehensive planning, I think the question to ask, do we like the trajectory we're on? Do we feel we've identified the practices and the strategies that are gonna work? Whether it be pre-K, whether it be curriculum redesign, and how do we expand on what we've already done? Because there's great things happening, it's just expanding on those.
Because pre-K hits the economically disadvantaged, which we had a slide on.
Well, but there's a lot of bumps in that road. That's also sometimes our most transient group. So we get them in, they've already missed that chance for pre-K. Or we help them and they go elsewhere,
True.
They're not as stable as some of the older, because a lot of parents feel they can or need to move, often when their children are younger. The other is, you don't just want a pre-K program, you want a good pre-K program. And all that takes expertise and study to get going. As long as this board is empowering administration to face that way and move that way forward, I think we're doing our share.
Great.
Okay? Is there more?
Just a couple comments.
Just the budget piece.
Just the budget.
We can wrap
Just the
that in if
dollars.
you want.
This is the business we're in, right? Isn't this why we're all here, for student achievement?
Yeah.
It takes the biggest part of our
But
time.
you want to make everyone successful.
Yeah. And to your point earlier about being consistent and so forth, the board made the decision a few years back to stay consistent with the goals, the annual goals, instead of chasing after, the latest, greatest thing. It's like, all right, let's stay consistent so we can keep our work going in the right direction, or in a similar direction. So just real quick here on the budget items, looking at the curriculum and instruction components, you can see the big ticket items, as Dr. Hartman said about the curriculum writing. I mean, that's a major piece of that. That will continue as we continue to expand that. And by expand that, meaning at the secondary level, you have ELA and math that will expand into other courses, geometry, outdoor too, and so forth, as an example. Also then looking at content areas, expanding into science and social studies, and bringing them, start to work with the staff and bringing them online, so that work will continue. Biology and science curriculum, working on those and looking at identifying resources. Talked about the next generation science standards, the work that needs to go into retooling the curriculum and work there, so the focus there. You can see that. On the instruction, continuing working with Dr. Rao and our principals and staff with the ESL work that's been happening, which has been phenomenal. It's been really good. Looking at personalizing the learning cohort work that we started with the educator effectiveness plan. So that's a big ticket item. Curriculum software is always a big item. There's some examples of that there. And then obviously CVA is another big ticket item when it comes to looking at the programming, digital programming that goes in the background that we are working with or partnering with the IU and doing. Another, again, just a big ticket item.
Yeah, and so again, not much has changed. If you pull up last year's presentation, it's very, very similar. It's just starting to really look at, with ESSER running out in September of '24, it's really being intentional about July, August, and September, getting what we need, finishing up curriculum work, getting things as close to where we want it as possible before the general fund kicks in. But when you look at those last two areas of our learning system, the assessment and the environment pieces, continuing to keep those assessment online platforms that are giving us that real-time data that teachers can look at right away. And then, again, just our annual assessment contracts with Acadians and Dibbles that we've been looking at. So those resources that allow us to have live data for teachers. With our environment, continuing on with our PBIS work through the spec consultants. Not quite sure what that dollar amount's gonna look like. We're continuing to utilize ESSER for that as long as we can. And Sarah and her team will be working on the transition plan for how that navigates into our budget after ESSER is out. And then PBIS resources and materials and our Power School Unified Classroom pieces. So continuing on that piece of the instructional model and really focusing on embedding the PBIS work into all of our schools more deeply. And then the last piece, same as last year, we plan to continue on with our leadership development. That work that we've been doing, we had a retreat in October. The school administrators spent an evening at Work Wisdom and just, again, talked about transition management, talked about leading through change and transition. So as we're implementing new programs, self-assessing where we are as leaders and where our natural strengths are to help guide our staff through times of change, and where we need to put some leadership qualities on higher rotation during times of change. And so just really good dialogue and learning that we've been doing through the Work Wisdom group. So again, we'd like to continue investing in that opportunity for next school year as well for our leaders. So those are our major anticipated items as of right now. As you know, April and May is when you really start to see a lot of our contracts and what our actual pieces are that we're looking at as we head into the close of the school year. So you'll have more that way, but this is our first glance forecast of where we're going.
I'm not interested in forcing anyone into new reports, but it would be interesting to see what ESSER's programs we're going to be able to continue to move forward on. I know we've tried to be very intelligent about how we use those dollars, but a good close look at what we did with the ESSER's money as far as curriculum and instruction work, and what programs stay, what ones go, or what they're going to cost. Because the idea was this was money for programs that often were a one-time thing. But
get
some
us to
of
where
them
we need.
naturally go on, and I think we need to take a close look at those.
Yeah, we've closed out ESSER 1, we've closed out ESSER 2, so we could give you some of that, where did we land, those are finished, and now we're in our last.
And a good close look at those
leg of
programs.
ESSER
Are there some of them that we really do want to hang on to? Or were some of them just a one-time shot anyhow?
Some of them, some of the ESSER funds, a lot of the ESSER funds were used at that time to supplant things that would have been in the general budget. So we
Okay.
did alleviate some stress on the general budget over those COVID years. The software pieces that you saw, the educational software, a lot of that was in the general budget. CVVA wages, that's general budget pieces that when ESSER 3 expires,
Comes
some of
back.
that's gonna need to come back in. So the work we're doing with Adele and Anthony right now is exactly what you're talking about, is we're getting ready to budget for 24, 25. Those things that we supplanted, we need to say, first of all, is it worth bringing back in, right? There's a lot of those online platforms that Don and I are running an audit on that I don't know that we need that many. And so we're being strategic with what the usage is and getting reports on how much usage there is before we bring that back over to the general.
Okay.
But we have tried to use it for the one-time big, elevate the system, let's go, get the work done,
Every
make
now
as
and then,
much use
even
of
in
this as we
you
can.
mentioned well, and we did that with Esther's Fund. Well, next year, we're not doing it with Esther's Fund.
Mhm.
So, thank you,
Like that.
both of you.
Thanks for your time.
Are we all done with these two?
I believe so.
Mr. Markham, you've been very patient with us.
It's good to hear how it all works. So just looking at numbers. All right. I'm Stuart Morcom from BBD LLP to present the audit this year. So I think you all should have a copy of the audit sent to you. Okay. So I'll be referring to some page numbers as I go through this slide. And if you could go on to the next slide, Dr. Hartman. This is a summary of what is on page 1 of the independent auditor's report that is in front of you. And just as a preface, this is a final draft version. You'll see it's subject to change with the watermark on it, but we don't expect any significant changes. It's already been through our internal review, and it just needs to go through our quality control review. So the numbers are as final as we can get them at this point. And when it is finalized, it will be brought back before the board to be approved.
Could we have a
I'm sorry.
timeline on that?
Next week.
Next week.
Next week.
roll it onto the consent agenda.
It'll be our next, okay.
So this slide is essentially just summarizing page 1, as I said. And all of these little paragraphs here are essentially pointing to the same thing, that you have an unmodified audit opinion in all regards, materially, with financial items, with internal controls. We did not find anything that was material that we needed to report on. That last paragraph there is talking about a new government accounting standard, which affects your government-wide statements. But on the fund level statements, it really hasn't affected anything significantly. It's in regards to software being considered a capital asset, which on your fund level statements that you budget at, that doesn't affect you one bit. So if there's any questions on the auditor's report or anything regarding that, you can take those now. If not, we can go on to the next slide. So this next slide is, probably the focus of attention for everybody, the budget versus actual. And this is a summary of what is on page 53. There's a much more detailed schedule on page 53. So you'll see there that your variance in the right column, any number that's positive is a good thing for you. Essentially, revenues came in higher than expected with that positive variance. So $1.6 million variance. To break that down, your local source revenues, and you can see this on page 53, were $2.5 million higher than expected. The three big portions that make that up are interest income was about $1 million higher than budgeted. And I've seen that at every district I've been at so far. No one could have predicted the increase in interest rates at the time of the budget. So that was just, it's across the board. Transfer taxes for real estate was $614,000 higher than expected, a notoriously difficult to budget item because we don't know who's gonna be doing real estate transactions any given year. And you had a significant real estate tax assessment appeal of $482,000 that was not budgeted for. So those three make up the local source variance. For state sources, they are 1.3 million more than expected. Basic ed was 350,000 of that, and that's due to the state's budget not being passed until after your budget was. And then 850,000 of that was, and I'm just talking off of the page 53, but this is just a summary, so you could say on this slide. But 850,000 of that was due to bond subsidies that were provided by the state that were not expected. The state was expected to discontinue the program, but your bond subsidies qualified before the program ended, and that money was subsequently transferred to the capital projects fund because it wasn't budgeted for. And then federal source revenue, you can see is a $2.2 million negative variance on page 53 there. And that is because ESSER funds that were budgeted for were not expended during the year. And this is because ESSER is a multi-year program, and obviously you have some big things going on with ESSER, and some of those funds just weren't expended in this year. Obviously they will be expended before the end of the grant, so in the coming years. But that variance correlates with variances in expenses, so they offset each other. Now you can see expenditures were $445,000 positive variance. So for a budget this size, that's pretty much in line. But some things that management at Adele decided to point out in the MD&A that I think are pertinent are salaries across the board were under budget by $561,000, largely due to open positions during the year, just because they couldn't be filled. So, you know, that's a good thing and a bad thing. You have that money as a positive variance, but no one wants unfilled positions for programs that, you know, should be running at full speed. And, you know, the other side of that coin is your support services for substitute costs were about $180,000 higher than expected. So you kind of see those two things going hand in hand a lot. But the last thing I want to point out on this slide is your change in fund balance after your transfers was $222,000 positive. So that brings your final ending fund balance to that $16.6 million in the general fund. Does anyone have any questions about the performance this year specifically, or anything else I discussed on this slide? Okay, we can move on to the next slide. Just a quick summary of what that $6.6 million at the end of the year consists of. So in the general fund, you can't have more than 8% of your next year's budget expenditures as unassigned or just, you know, sitting there for no specific purpose. So the board has committed all of these amounts, which I'm sure you remember from a previous meeting. These amounts were committed for these specific purposes. We have quite a few of them here now. And if anyone wants to discuss any of these specifically or has any questions about them specifically, we could go over them. But these are the ways that the district has set aside its surpluses over the years in the general fund. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. This is a summary of the capital projects fund, which obviously there's a lot going on in the district with capital projects right now.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
As you can see, there's a lot of money to start the capital projects fund this year. There was 70 million overall between the two funds, and that's due to the significant bond issuances for the projects that were going on. And you can see 23 million of that was drawn down during the year in expenditures for some of your projects, middle school and Smoketown. So at the end of the year, you have 52 million still between these two funds. And, you know, a lot of that's going to be drawn down as we saw those bids already put together tonight. But there was a $2.8 million transfer from the general fund, 2 million coming from the surplus, and then that 850,000 coming from the bond subsidies that weren't expected that I mentioned earlier. Does anyone have any questions on the capital projects fund? Anything that went on there? Okay, we can move on to the next one. I did skip the pension liability update this year because I feel like everyone is kind of comfortable with the fact that there's this big number on the front of the financial statements. If anyone has any questions on that, I'd be happy to talk about them. But this final slide here summarizes page 73, which is the schedule of findings and question costs. As an entity that receives over $750,000 in federal awards, you're required to get a single audit. This year, we tested the ESSER funds and the Title I program, and we had no question costs, no internal controls findings. Everything was all above board. And this slide also summarizes what's going to happen beyond this. The PDE AFR will be filed. The financial statements will be filed with your bondholders well before December 27th. And the single audit will be filed as well once the final audit's approved by the board. And I'd just like to say I had great experience this year with the staff, the business office staff. Everything ran smoothly as usual, even though there's been some significant transitions. So.
Just out of curiosity, the two programs that were tested, do you select those or how are those selected?
It's a complicated process that involves, we have to look at everything that, every program that is above 750,000 itself. And if that program hasn't been audited in the past 2 years, we're required to audit it. If it has, we do a risk assessment. And if that risk assessment comes out that, it hasn't had any issues in the past, it has consistent oversight, there's been consistent staff and grant administration, stuff like that. If we come to a conclusion that it looks low risk, we don't consider the need to audit it. But that all being said, we still need to audit at least 20% of the total federal expenditures. So if we find things are low risk, but we don't hit the 20%, we just have to audit them anyway.
Got it.
So.
Thank you.
Any other questions about anything? All right, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stuart? This is Hudson.
Yes.
We do this one every year.
Pardon me?
So we do this one every year.
Yes, and I'm recommending that we, once again, opt out of the Act One accelerated budget process. To give you a point of reference, for the 23-24 year, the Act One index was 4.1%, which was about the highest it has been since the inception of Act One. We came in with a millage rate increase of 2.75%. Now this year, for the 24-25 budget, the Act One index is 5.3. It has never been that high before. So the benefit of not opting out of the accelerated budget process is that we could apply for exceptions. The only two exceptions we could apply for now are special education and the PSERS exception. That would allow us to raise the millage rate above the Act One index, but at 5.3, I just cannot see that happening. We don't qualify anyway for the PSERS exception, and the special education exception would only bring us an additional $150,000. Any thoughts? No? Okay.
Thank you.
We'll put this on the consent agenda for next week. Thank you.
Mr. Apple, you have
Good evening, board.
two programs to talk about.
What's that?
You have two items to talk about.
Yep, hopefully, pretty easy ones. First item is to elicit some help from IU 13. Just need to come out for a day, help us build up a application server that lets our phone system interact with the PA system at the middle school. It does include some knowledge transfer, which is good. So when we spin up Smoketown, upgrade the high school, we'll be able to go and add those additional port elements and move forward. So they have an individual who he's goes all over the state, helps a lot of districts do exactly this. So I had a chance to talk to him a month ago, and I said, I want you to come do it for us. So yeah, so that's first one. I did ask for approval tonight for that. Yeah, just and get that
So it needs to be
checked out
instituted right away.
if
Any
possible.
questions about it?
No.
If not, we have a motion to approve this tech support consulting.
I move we accept the agreement as presented.
Sorry.
Any other questions? If not, could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Gensel?
Aye.
Mr. Benigno?
Aye.
Mr. Dillman?
Aye.
Mrs. Kapka?
Aye.
Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Mr. Hurst?
Aye.
Dr. Martin?
Aye.
Ms. Trowbridge? Aye. Mrs. Groff?
Aye.
Thank you.
There's one.
And the last one is a 2-for-1 deal, as I like to say. So as we're continuing to roll out, develop, and implement Power School, as Mr. Talley most graciously commented back in the spring, we worked as best as we could out of the box. So we've kind of come up, I guess, a few issues that the more we're in discussion with teachers and admins, we kind of are like, well, the box is not good enough. So unfortunately, that leads me to look for add-on software. But NBA is one of the good names in the game, and they have two particularly awesome products. One is their report creator. It's actually one of the few report plugins for PowerSchool that will actually let us aggregate data from the various different subtotals in the database and make it look pretty and not have to basically be a SQL coder. There are two of us in my office that can kind of do that, but this program will let me slap one together in an hour, not 5 days of full investment. So, and then the other one is the alert creator. So Barrett School has a very base level alert utility. I don't like the word alert, so I call it the badge system. But what this will let us do is we have about 786 different data points in Fire School, and I can point to any one of them and I could say, if this, give me a badge. If not this, give me a badge. So we'll be able to identify everything from 504s, IEPs, to English language learner, to are the kids on the football team? Are they in band? I know. Middle school, are they in 7 red, 7 gold, 7 blue? Being able to really kind of, we don't need those stinking badges. Yes, we do. And we're going to be able to put them on ourselves. So those are the two products up for discussion tonight. So anyone have any questions?
Does that involve something we have to approve at some point?
Next, it's on for consent next week.
Next week?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
Dr. Hartman, you're the next one on our agenda.
Sure, so just brief description of the dual credit agreement with the CTC. As you're aware, Lancaster County CTC has really two types of programs it offers. It's high school program, which our juniors and seniors are eligible to attend, but they also have a pretty robust adult ed program, which does oftentimes lead to pathways for associate's degrees or other professional certifications and credentials. Over the last couple of years, they've had more open seats than anticipated in their adult ed program. So a program they would like to pilot and like to try is they would like to open up their adult ed programs that are in degree granting pathways. So veterinarian assistant or vet tech, automotive tech, for example. They want to open up those seats to non-CTC high school students, similar to how we have partnerships with Stevenson or Stevens and Millersville and other institutes of higher ed that we have either dual enrollment or college and high school agreements with. So this is just a typical affiliate agreement that we have with all those institutes of higher ed, even though it's with the CTC, it's for their adult education side of the house. So if we have students who are interested in a program that they offer through their adult ed program at CTC, but don't necessarily want to go and be a student at CTC, they want to remain a traditional CV student, but they are interested in taking a course and becoming a vet tech or automotive tech or welding, they may have a seat available for them on the adult ed side, and they would take it just like any other college dual enrollment course. So it's a great opportunity, I feel, for some of our students who are looking maybe not to go full-fledged CTC, but might want that opportunity to take a course or two in high school. So this will be for beginning in the fall of 2024. They're looking to start this, but they're looking to get their agreements in place right now.
What will be the charge compared to what we pay for a CTC student? How's that going to be calculated?
It's going to run similar to other dual enrollment programs where that charge isn't necessarily the burden of the district. It'll be just like dual enrollment. If a student wants to take a course at Millersville, in more cases than not, there may be arrangements if it's a low income student or something where we work through some of our equitable service opportunities. But for the most part, this would be students.
Student funded.
Yeah.
Are there any other school districts that have this partnership?
I believe that probably every district in the county that's part of the CTC is going to at least pilot this.
Are any in place now?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's starting, they're looking to build this to start, so.
And some of these students, I understand, may, after they graduate, go back to the CTC and finish the full adult program.
They could, yep. Yeah, they could, or it could just be a opportunity for them to go somewhere else and take it. Ultimately, I think they're looking for opportunities for students to almost have an associate's degree and at the same time they graduate high school.
Oh, okay. You know, what, would this be for juniors and seniors?
Yes, yeah, juniors and seniors.
Okay. So all we'll have to do is approve the contract
Yes.
next week?
Is it
What's it tonight?
Yeah, it's on for
Oh, approval. No,
approval
you're right,
tonight,
it's
but
on
if
for
anybody
approval.
has any questions, we can table it till next week.
Let's do it.
Well, if it's not time required, it's supposed to be on the consent agenda next week. So let's be consistent with that,
Sure.
okay? Oh,
Okay,
you're
so
ready for it.
I'm ready. So the next agenda item is a contract with a vendor that will provide a data bridge between an existing program that we use, IEP Writer, which is where we keep our IEPs, our 504s, our GIEPs, all the paperwork that's associated with that, all of the correspondence, all the data that gets sent to the state. This is the bridge that will be I'm gonna look at my tech words because I don't want to mess up. A bidirectional integration between PowerSchool and IEP Writer to send data back and forth between both systems to be able to have a much more robust way of looking at the data on the PowerSchool side, but also on the IEP Writer side. So let's say that there would be an address change on a student, that you don't have to have two systems working in separately, that if something happens on PowerSchool twice a day, that information will then be inputted into IEP Writer as well. So that's just one example of why you need something like this. It's a bidirectional sharing of data multiple times a day. So the company that works with IEP Writer is called Level Data. This is their contract that they use through a resale partner in Pennsylvania, which is MCIU. So that's why the document says MCIU. They're just handling the contract for Pennsylvania, but the company is called Level Data. And they have provided us that fee, which is a one-time setup fee, a prorated term of service, which is $34.11.27. And then this will be updated every year for about a cost of $5,300 that we will have to maintain as that data bridge from the Level 1 side. Any questions for me about that,
Questions?
that I'll be able to answer?
No questions, and we'll put it on the consent agenda for
Thank you.
next week. Last item, Smoketown. You have the poll, excuse me. We have the poll results. I personally did not think the response was huge. Ms. Zerdell tells me that it's considered acceptable. In this last week, I assume you've received about as many emails as I have from people explaining why they want to make the change. And for me, they made a difference. I think some of them brought out a perspective that I respected. I know we've been trying to balance that saying about keeping your heart in the past and your mind in the present and your eyes in the future. So how do you balance all that? Well, it seems as if both our staff and our parents know how they would like to balance it. From the poll, the results in the majority for keeping the name Smoketown was 55% and 59.3% from the two groups. Now that still leaves, close to half the people that don't think that's what they want. That includes those that really aren't concerned. They're perfectly happy with it. Whitmer was the next highest one at 19%. So for those that have an opinion, it's pretty clear where their opinions say. So I will either open it for discussion or a motion. Well, I can't take a motion. I tried that before, didn't I? Discussion or at least an agreement to get it onto next week's agenda for a final vote. Oh, come on, when we first talked about it, everybody had something to say.
This poll is from Katie's poll.
Yes.
Could we get that email to us, because we didn't see the results?
Excuse me?
I didn't see the results of that.
Right. I didn't see it either.
The results, so that, it's just this.
Yeah, well, we're just seeing that for first
Oh,
tonight.
I'm sorry.
The first
I'm
time
sorry.
How many people
I
voted?
should have
Yeah, how many
seen
people
that-
voted on that poll?
I should have looked to see if everyone was on that email.
How many voted on that poll from Katie?
Parents, 111, and staff, 27,
Okay, because the only poll that I saw was
was the
from,
one they did.
that they did, it was,
PTO.
it was,
Yeah.
what, yeah, the PTO.
Yeah, ours, for Smoketown, it was 16 out of 27 for the staff in favor of keeping the name. And for the families, it was 61 out of 111.
Of the ones that voted, how many are in Smoketown? How many students?
I don't know.
Well,
I know it was on that brochure.
Well, here's what's complicated. We do not have a per household mailing list. We have an emergency mailing list, which means some students have 1, 2, 3, or even 4 email addresses. And that's how many polls went out. 908 polls.
Well, how many students do we have in Smoketown?
What, maybe 500?
360, so less than a third voted?
Yeah.
Meaning 2/3?
That's very good, because
That's
anywhere
statistically
between,
high for.
It is.
anywhere between 3 and
Help me out
30%, anything up to 30%.
So 2/3 didn't care.
Yeah,
Tells me that 2/3 is flexible
yeah,
Correct.
in the name.
absolutely.
I'm willing to move forward and we can't make a motion, correct?
No, but you can suggest if you put.
I'm gonna suggest we name it Whitmer Elementary and be done with it. And I think I have the votes to carry it over.
Anybody want to suggest a different name?
I think this just, you can argument that same 2/3 the other way.
Good.
They don't care, they're fine with Smoketown.
If-
The poll, the people that did take the time to show up and actually lend their vote, because the ones that didn't care, they could, if they had swayed one way or the other towards even just a change, they didn't have to vote for a name, they could have just
Sure.
said, yeah, change it, whatever, but they didn't. So the ones that did wanna keep it, I say honor the ones that wanted to keep it.
Let me ask you this. If for some reason we decided to close Leola and move it to this campus over here, would we name it Leola?
I don't know, I think we'd have to poll the people and see if 113 responded, and if 61%
Just out
said
of
keep it
curiosity,
Leola, we keep it Leola. Yeah. I don't know.
a couple of the emails that I got, which is so well worded to explain the importance of tradition, of bringing, it wasn't so much it being in Smoketown, so much as it being the spirit of Smoketown and bringing that with them. And I respect that. And by the way, I tried to do a historical research, and along Old Philly Pike, there have been 4 different schools. One of them was called Whitmer Heights, and it was on Old Philly Pike, because there is a housing development back there that was referred to as Whitmer Heights, even though it wasn't in Whitmer. It's been called East Lampeter, it's been called Smoketown. It seems, and I couldn't even find the boundaries for Smoketown, because it's an unincorporated or uncharted village. So it has an eastern boundary, but nobody knows where the western boundary is, much like Brownstown. It used to be West Earl, and then the pieces of it went to East Earl, and these small municipalities have a distinct flavor of their own, and if that's what they want, I'm fine with leaving that name and bringing it along.
Well, if you're following tradition, elementary schools are named after the town they are residing in.
Well, no, they're not, because we're not even sure Smoketown is, the current Smoketown is in Smoketown.
Right,
I
well,
think so.
Neola's in Neola, Brownstown's in Brownstown.
Yeah.
And Fritz
This
in
is
Fritz.
definitely Whitmer.
Fritz isn't in Fritz.
I know, I was kidding.
Oh. I thought the hour was getting too late for you.
I just,
But like, this is Whitmer, the Whitmer Fire Company's across the street from the school, like, this is Whitmer. This is coming on the main hub, main campus with the high school and middle school, like, it's an on-campus main campus. So it does need a new name, because it's new location, new. And the spirit of Smoketown is still gonna be there, it's still gonna be in the kids, it's just that spirit just has a different name, or, because that spirit's not gonna go anywhere. And when these kids are in middle school, are the parents really gonna care? Oh, they changed the name. It's one thing when you're in
Let's
it.
face it, a few years down the pike, nobody's gonna care.
Right. Well, the other poll leaned the other way, that the majority wanted to go to Whitmer,
That
and
was,
not Smoketown.
that was 42% to 33%. But that's not our poll.
Well, it's still a poll that people took the
Somebody
time to
took.
fill out and submit.
But even that isn't as big as the 55 and 59%. I'm just in favor
Of the ones that voted.
giving the people what they want.
yeah, I think it's kind of distasteful, put out a poll and then say, well, we don't really care what you think anyway. So, I would,
Mike doesn't care.
We don't care.
right.
I'm just telling that it wasn't that.
Clearly
We're
not,
ignoring it.
so I would go with what they want. Like you said, it makes no difference either way, 20 years from now, so
Maybe we
Give them
should
what they
poll
want.
the Smoketown PTO whenever we do need to make a decision. It's a board decision, it's not a Smoketown
Oh,
PTO.
no doubt. At
It
the
is a
end of
board
the
decision.
day,
We can take a look at people.
correct, and if we're gonna
We
go
don't
that
have
route, I
to-
felt like we should have never done the poll in the first place then.
Well, we should never have done the poll in the first place. We should have stood up and made the decision last meeting, but we didn't do it.
I don't
we
think
didn't
there's
have
anything wrong
everyone,
with
we
asking for
also did
community
not have
input.
everyone.
Yeah, I think that's
We
important.
did not have everyone
Right.
at the table. Tonight we do. I'm gonna go around the table, tell me what your preference is.
Smoketown.
Can I give you my rationale before just?
If you'd like, sure.
I would like to. So if it were up to me solely, I would name it Whitmer. But it's not up to me solely. There was a poll put out, I said last meeting that I would defer to the people to whom it really mattered. I must do that. And based on that, I would go with Smoketown.
Since I haven't seen the actual data with the poll, I'm going with Whitmer.
Whitmer.
Smoketown.
Smoketown.
All the time we've been remodeling it, we've been calling it the new Smoketown. So to me, it's Smoketown.
And to me, it's Smoketown. It'll be on next week's agenda to name the new school Smoketown. Okay? Good.
I ain't gonna lose sleep.
That settles that. And the truth is, in a couple of years, no one will remember that we thought about it.
Oh, remember,
And just to, because Leola's gonna be moving to the old Smoketown building while the Smoketown building's going to the old middle school building for a year, 2
Say that
years.
to me, I don't know what's going to happen in the future.
That was the last I heard, that Leola, during the construction, the entire school is going to the old Smoketown building, while the Smoketown building is going to the middle school. So we
Leola,
have to think about
if
that with
anyone
moving.
thinks we're going to take Leola and move it into the Smoketown building,
When the construction.
When the construction-
While the
It's
construction's
during a
going
2-year
on.
renovation.
So we're gonna have to rename Smoketown.
oh, well,
So
that's
there's
only,
two Smoketowns.
that's only a stopgap.
Leola, it would still be Leola.
But it's in the, what I'm saying is people are gonna be old Smoketown, new Smoketown, it's,
Boy, it's-
Name
But
is
isn't
gonna be-
If you need
Leola-
the building, it would be the old Smoketown building.
I'm just putting it out there that that is going to
Oh,
be.
we'll deal with it, that's
an
gonna
elephant
be,
in the room.
that's gonna be a
Right.
short-term issue. And, isn't
We
there a
hope
good,
with construction.
isn't there a good
it's short-term
chance that
issue.
construction will be done before they have to move back in?
It's the same process with Smoketown,
We'll deal with that.
2 years.
We'll deal with that. This is taking up quite enough time. And I appreciate, Katie going to the trouble of putting the whole thing together. Okay, board agenda for next month. Any questions? Anyone in the public at this time would like to address the board on any issue in the world? Board concerns.
I did go to the Saxton Stump law education breakfast. It was interesting. The breakfast was very good. Anyway, just 2 items, and the one was Title IX. It's still progressing in the courts. Evidently, there were something like 370,000 comments. And so the people in Washington are very adamant about reading all the comments. So a decision in November was impossible. So probably looking to January, February, first of the year. The second was on independent contractors. And there's some things going on in that world where some of the independents are feeling that they're doing the work of the regular employees and would like the benefits. So.
Anything else? I would remind you that next month the nominating team will come with their recommendation. That is something that, if I remember correctly, we don't approve, we just accept the report. Is that it? Then I will take a motion to adjourn to executive session for legal and personnel reasons.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?